Alright, so let's talk about a trap that most people enter before they're even old enough to realize it exists. And no, I'm not talking about a conspiracy. I'm talking about conditioning, the kind that happens so gradually that most people never stop to question it. The moment you enter school, you're introduced to a system designed around structure. You sit in rows, you wait for bells, you ask permission to speak, to get up, to leave, permission to eat, and permission to use the bathroom, even if you're on the verge of wetting your pants. And after doing that for 12 years straight, something interesting happens. Predictability starts to feel normal. Structure starts to feel safe. Routine starts to feel comfortable. And uncertainty starts to feel uncomfortable. Maybe that's why so many people struggle the moment life refuses to follow the script. Because for most of our early years, the script was already written, and the script is pretty simple. Wake up, go to school, follow directions, pass the test, move to the next grade, and repeat. And eventually, you graduate, at which point many people begin searching for the adult version of the rewards they've always known. The gold stars become performance reviews, the stickers become paychecks, and the approval becomes promotions. And society treats those things as evidence that you're succeeding. And for most, success looks like this. Get a stable job, get benefits, and get direct deposit every 2 weeks. Stay safe, stay comfortable, and stay predictable. And to be fair, for many people, that arrangement works perfectly fine. But the interesting question is, what happens when comfort quietly transforms into dependency? Because comfort is strange. At first, it feels like freedom, but over time, it can become something else entirely. Sure, a steady paycheck creates security. It pays the bills, keeps food on the table, creates stability. But it can also create a powerful attachment to routine. Not because people are weak, not because people are lazy, but because human beings naturally become attached to whatever feels safe. And in some ways, people can become like zoo animals that forget how to hunt because food shows up at the same time every day. The environment becomes predictable, the routine becomes expected, and eventually the certainty starts to feel necessary. And once something feels safe, losing it begins to feel dangerous. And this is where the trap begins to tighten around you. Because modern life offers so many comforts. Endless streaming subscriptions, food delivery, and online shopping. So much convenience and entertainment at the press of a button every waking hour. And because of this, people gradually stop building their lives, and instead, they start maintaining their routines. The routine becomes the goal, then the paycheck, the next vacation, next weekend, and the next holiday. And before long, years begin passing, and not because people are pursuing something meaningful, but because they're protecting what they've become accustomed to. In turn, this creates one of the most powerful fears in modern life, the fear of uncertainty. And I'm not necessarily talking about the fear of being broke. For many people, it's the fear of losing the routine they've built their identity around. Because once people become attached to comfort, they often become terrified of anything that threatens it, even if the thing threatening it might actually improve their lives. And this is where things can get uncomfortable, because fear has a strange way of keeping people compliant. People smile at bosses they don't respect, they follow systems they know are broken. People accept raises that don't even keep up with inflation, and people spend decades doing things they openly complain about. Not because they're stupid, and not because they're incapable, but because uncertainty feels more dangerous than dissatisfaction, which is a fascinating trade. Think about that. A person can spend years being unhappy while simultaneously being terrified of change. Not because change is guaranteed to fail, but because the unknown feels scarier than the familiar, even when the familiar isn't working. And maybe that's why so many people feel trapped. And not because somebody locked the door, but because they've become deeply attached to the room, and it feels safe, predictable, comfortable, and familiar. And oddly, the walls become a blanket. even when the space itself starts to feel too small and suffocating. For some, though, they reach a moment where something feels off, even with the paycheck arriving and the routine still functioning. Life looks stable from the outside, yet something feels unfinished, like they're maintaining a life rather than actively creating one. And that's a difficult realization, because it forces a person to confront an uncomfortable possibility. What if comfort isn't the reward? What if comfort is simply the environment? And what if it was never supposed to become the destination? Well, let's look at the people who create dramatic change in their lives. There's often a pattern, right? At some point, remaining the same becomes more uncomfortable than changing. Not because the fear disappears, not because uncertainty suddenly becomes enjoyable, but because staying put begins to feel worse. Which raises an interesting question. How many people are actually trapped by the system, and how many are trapped by their attachment to comfort? Because those aren't necessarily the same thing. One is external, while the other is internal, and the internal version might be far more powerful. Really think about this. A broken system can influence your decisions, but comfort can convince you not to make them at all. And maybe that's why so many people spend their lives waiting. Waiting for certainty, waiting for permission, waiting for the perfect opportunity, and waiting for fear to disappear. And while they're waiting, life quietly continues moving forward. So perhaps the biggest trap isn't school, or jobs, or corporations, or society. Maybe those things are only part of the story. Maybe the deeper trap is forgetting that comfort was supposed to be temporary, a place to rest, not a place to live forever. And perhaps that's the uncomfortable question most people spend their lives avoiding. Are we actually trapped, or have we simply become too comfortable to leave? Be sure to comment your thoughts. Let me know what you think. And remember, lock in and enjoy your life.